died very suddenly back in May of 1990, and he was a passionate rugby man. And one of the very last things that Dad did, he was secretary of Sydney Rugby Union, because the main organising body for rugby in New South Wales discovered this guy out at Campbelltown who was doing amazing things for the local youth and for the local rugby union club.
Right.
And when Dad retired from cyclone fencing, which is where he worked all of his life,
Right.
they said to him, "We'd love you to come in and help us in at, central rugby headquarters." And so Dad got involved in what was happening in New South Wales Rugby Union, and Dad always wanted Russia to come out, because there was a Russian rugby union team, and he wanted them to come out and play in Australia. It's all about international rugby fraternity and friendship and all of those sorts of things. And Dad was carried from the field, from the stands right next to where all the guys were playing, into an ambulance to go to hospital because we thought he had emphysema and pleurisy. And it turned out, he was a smoker, like so many men back in those days, had given it up 20 years before. But he obviously had had lung cancer, but by the time they discovered it was cancer, his entire body was just riddled with it. And but the field that he was taken from and the team that were playing in the number 5 jersey for Sydney on that day was a guy called Peter Fitzsimons, who I'd not even met.
Wow.
So, I know.
Wow.
I know. Amazing.
Wow.
So, in fact, I met Pete. So Dad died 3 weeks after that, and I was devastated. I was actually overseas when he was taken to hospital. So we nursed Dad first in hospital and then at home. So I took a week off work to try and work out how I was going to live my life without this guardian angel. And my first day back at work was on the Monday, and the new issue of Cleo was coming out. And the girls in publicity said to me, "Lisa, we really need you to, I know this is difficult, but we really need you to go and do some publicity, and can you go to the Today Show and just do a thing about this, whatever the story was that was in the new issue." And I thought, oh boy, I'm really going to have to regroup to sort of smile, because I can't find any reasons to smile at the moment. But
How long was that since your dad had passed away?
That was a week.
A week, wow.
Yeah, so we'd had the funeral and, still trying to find meaning in every day and struggling with that.
Yeah.
But I thought, no, this is really good, because I've got to get back up again. I've got to stand up. I've got to get back to work. So I went in via the Today Show, and the meet and greet producer came and got me from reception and took me down to hair and makeup. And Steve Liebman and Liz Hayes were the presenters.
Yeah.
And I'd done the show before, so I knew a couple of the guys and girls there. And they were taking me into hair and makeup, where I go every morning now.
Right.
And the meet and greet producer said, "Oh, Lisa, sorry, there's someone just finishing." And she went over and said to the hair and makeup girls, "Look, we need to fix up Lisa, because she's not very far off going on." And so the person in the chair, just as I was walking over, got up, and the meet and greet girl said, "Oh, Lisa, I'd like you to meet Peter Fitzsimons." And I sort of put out my hand and sort of looked at him and saw him go up. Well, I was still holding his hand, and I remember thinking, "Oh, he's that rugby player." Because I'd watched a bit of rugby union, courtesy of Dad always watching it at home.
Totally.
I remember looking at him thinking, yeah, I recognise that face. And Pete was shaking my hand, and he said, "Hello," and then, this really beautiful, strong handshake. I love a strong handshake.
Nothing I hate more than somebody's giving me a weak handshake. I find it so offensive.
Hate it.
Yeah.
But also men who, particularly a big guy like Pete, who understand the difference between crushing your fingers and doing something that has strength but warmth.
Yes.
But all of a sudden, this beautiful, strong handshake, I could just feel him go soft. And he said to me, "Lisa Wilkinson, you're Ray Wilkinson's daughter." And I went, oh no, he's going to say something. He's going to say something and I'm being so strong. Please don't say anything. And he did. And I looked at him and this beautiful smile, because Pete's got quite a, he's got a face that's been on the bottom of rucks. It's lived a life, and I love that about him. So there's an enormous difference between Pete's face in repose and Pete's face smiling, and it just completely comes alive.
Yeah.
And he just looked at me with so much warmth and admiration for Dad, and immediately feeling that he was in that position of, your father was, everything that was on his face was, your father was an angel, and I can't believe I'm
meeting his daughter.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he said, your father was an amazing man, and I just want you to know the rugby community is so sad at his loss. And I was just thinking, please don't say anything else.
Yeah.
Please don't say
I've got to
another
get on
word.
live television.
And I just said thank you so much and sat down. And that was that. I was engaged to somebody else.
Oh, really?
He was going out with somebody else.
Wow.
And it was about 6 months later, Liz Hayes and I were living together.
Wow.
And she was single, I was single, and we were a little bit off men at that point.
Right, yeah.
Because I'd broken up with the fiance,
right,
and had been dating and, had a couple of, bad near misses, had the heart broken a couple of times.
Right, yeah.
Liz had just come out of a marriage, and so we were all a little bit off men.
Yes.
We were very much into pyjama parties in Tim Tams.
I love those parties.
They're very good. They are excellent for the soul.
They are. They really are. Yeah. For
Not
a while.
great for the thighs, but for the soul,
not good
they're
for the
very,
arse or
very
meeting
good.
people.
That's
Yeah.
right. So she came home one day and she said, "Have you ever heard of a guy called Peter Fitzsimons?" And I said, "Oh, is that rugby player?" "Yeah, no, I met him. He said some really nice things about Dad." And she said, "He's just started working as a reporter at the show. And he's so much fun. I just think you guys will get on like a house on fire." I said, "Liz, we're off boys at the moment, remember?"
Pass me the Tim Tam and
Yeah,
shut up.
exactly.
Yeah.
And she said, no. And I just really think you guys would get on well. And sure enough, 9 months later, she retold that story at our wedding. So,
because was it 10 weeks? You guys, was it 10 weeks and then you were engaged?
Yeah,
it was like super quick.
It
wasn't
happened really quickly. In 4 weeks of that, he was actually overseas covering the Winter Olympics for the Nine Network. So it was we just knew.
And then you got married 9 months after knowing each other, like officially knowing each other.
And a year after that.
That's so Kardashian of you, isn't it?
It is a bit, isn't it?
Totally.
He's my Lamar.
I know. Don't say that.
No, don't say that.
On live support as we speak. Shit.
Oops. No, but we just knew. And the good thing was we were both old enough and we'd had enough relationships where we knew what we didn't want.
Yes.
But we also recognised what we did want.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like a real waste of time to play games and muck around and...